So you want to study politics at Oxbridge. Here are 3 books that will help you look beyond the daily highlight reel of politics and to analytically think about how the world works and help you to get an offer from one of these universities. Book number 1, What Money Can't Buy by Michael J. Sandel. If there's only one book you read of this 3, it has to be this. It's political philosophy, which you barely touch in A-level, but it becomes one of the most interesting things to encounter, at least I think, at an undergraduate level. He covers how the market has become so pervasive in our modern life, and if there are actually any moral limits to it at all, even those that were previously seen as outside the realm of the market themselves. For example, he talks about how friendship has now been commodified. Sandel talks about why that is, and is there some characteristic of the market that if something is passed from one individual to another through a market transaction, is there something morally tainted about that caused by the transaction in the market itself? And do we have to have limits where we think markets should not be allowed and a red line? Or should we continue to let the market pervade and become ever more invasive in our daily lives? Somebody who was quite an advocate for the market, this definitely caused me food for thought. Uncomfortable nature of some of the cases that he talks about makes you consider there should be something outside of the market that is dictating these things. We can't transact everything on the market. The market is not the answer to everything, and that some things, I think are invaluable and shouldn't have a price attached to them in that way. Money pervades politics all the time. I mean, we can see this in the US, we can see this in the UK, and the tech deals we've seen with individuals like Sam Altman and Peter Thiel in politics show how there is this inherent connection between politics and money, and so understanding where markets are allowed is just invaluable. And if you want to see how to take ideas like these and actually implement them in your application, I've left my personal statement, which got all 5 offers from LSE, Oxford, UCL, Durham and Warwick down below in the description. So feel free to access that and see how you can use a book like this directly in your personal statement. Book number 2 is Wild Swans by Jung Chang. This one is a chunky book, but this book genuinely fascinating, and I'd recommend this to anyone. It covers the intergenerational journey of a grandmother, a mother and her daughter, Jung Chang, in 20th century China, and the impacts on these 3 women and their family around them of political, economic turmoil and upheaval, of war, of misogyny, of immigration, of all these things, of politics, and communist China spans from 1912, when her grandmother has foot binding, which is when in China they had the practice of binding women's feet because it was seen as attractive, all the way up to Jung Chang, who then migrates and becomes an author, and that's how she's written this. In Mao Zedong's China, he mobilized the population to walk forward on 2 legs to both industrialize and grow that agriculture really quickly, and this resulted in a mass famine, and Frank Ducotta himself has estimated that it caused up to 50 million deaths. After this event, Mao was kind of forced to retreat, and he launched his comeback in the form of the Cultural Revolution, where he called at young people to bombard the headquarters, reinstate his cult of personality and his power within the Chinese Communist Party at the time. And Jung Chang was actually a Red Guard herself and covers her experience of this. What happens is there's all these Red Guards who are invited by Mao to Beijing to come to these rallies and wave their little red books in the air. And the reason I find this so fascinating is because it's so alien to kind of the way you imagine people to behave in, say, Britain. So it's essentially the equivalent of imagining Keir Starmer standing at Downing Street and inviting a bunch of young people and then chanting about how much they love Keir Starmer, which, given the support for the Green Party among young people at the moment and Zach Polanski, I can't really see that happening. And just important caveat on this book, Jung Chang is fiercely against the communist regime of the 20th century. So her agenda in kind of painting them that way is worth understanding. Not that there wasn't great suffering in 20th century China, but just to let you know that there's not going to be as much nuance in that view if that's something that you're looking for, and it'd probably be good to also read a bit of background on China and the 20th century at the same time. Maybe watch a video or listen to a podcast. I'd recommend Rana Mitter. And book number 3 is Ravenous by Henry Dimbleby, which is a bit of a rogue throw-in, I think, and less overtly political than the other books, but I liked it because it has an intersection of how politics can go beyond the kind of distinction of high and low politics. Second wave feminists say the personal is the political, and I think this book really does that quite well. Food insecurity, obesity, and the climate crisis all in one. But I would also argue that this book is political in the sense that people's access to a basic standard of living is a political question, and why we do politics at all. I mean, why are we in politics if not to improve the lives of most people and kind of uplift them in some way? In terms of politics, the Marcus Rashford campaign for free school meals, Jamie Oliver's attempts to change the regulation around school food standards, and also rise of discussion about regulations such as the sugar tax, and books like Hyper-Processed People questioning the food environment and what role the state might have there in regulating that. Not to say the state does, but just to say it is something that's becoming quite important in how people kind of view their lives. Also covers how we've progressed to our modern food environment, and one of the key elements of this was Norman Borlaug and the Green Revolution, and so there's this intersection between science and politics here as well. Borlaug saw this desperation and destitution caused by the Depression and set out to create lower cost food by creating a higher yield wheat crop in Mexico. This kind of coincides with this post-war baby boom, and here you can see there's a clear intersection between science, politics, the environment, and so I think this book is really good for kind of expanding that if you still see politics through quite a narrow kind of lens of high politics versus low politics, but also you can feel free to disagree. I just think it makes you question that at least. That's it. That's the 3 books that I'm recommending that you read, and I've tried to make them as broad as possible and maybe not the books that you would first think of when you're thinking of politics. Here is analytical thinking and critically thinking about the ideas rather than the books themselves, which I hope I've kind of emphasised through giving this advice, and that's what's going to help you to get an offer from Oxbridge, either Cambridge or Oxford. A question to ask that I referenced in my last video as well is, did this book challenge, update, or reinforce what I already think, and kind of what do you think about the book? And if none of these books that I've mentioned appeal to you, I'll leave a prompt below that you can put into ChatGPT that will give you more book recommendations similar to the ones that I've given you, that will help you to critically engage and think for yourself and think independently, and hopefully that can increase your chances of getting that offer from your dream university.